Check, check, and we're back. We're back once again, guys. This is the Jazz Podcast, episode number 8. And we're back. We're going to be talking about another interesting case today. And I will say it's not going to be the Delphi murders case, as I've entailed on my last episode, which was episode number 7, part 4 of the Delphi murders case. I did state that I want to take a little break from that case and talk about something different, something that has been on my mind for quite a while. And that thing, or case, I would say, is actually the case of JonBenet Ramsey. Now, some of you guys may already be familiar with this case since it's like one of the biggest cases, I would say, from the late 90s. And investigations into this case are still ongoing, and I never really got to the bottom of that case. I knew that it was very suspicious regarding the family members, but I don't really ever think I've actually gotten to the bottom of this case. I actually want to do another investigation type of a series on the JonBenet Ramsey case, and according to how I'm planning things out, it should be another 3-part series, because there's no way this is gonna get done in one episode. Initially, I have planned to cover the JonBenet Ramsey case within 2 episodes, but now, thinking back, I probably was over optimistic because I've started to write my notes for part 1, and then I've sort of had a plan what I was gonna talk about on part 2. Those plans completely fell apart. I just looked at the general timeline and I was like, I can't fit the timeline and the evidence into one episode. There's no way, right? So I'm gonna actually be doing the timeline for the first part. So the first part is gonna be just about the events leading up to the death, and then after the death of JonBenet Ramsey. I will also talk about the people involved in this case to some extent. Part 2 will be, I think, a very interesting part for a lot of us, because I will be focusing on the evidence of the case. We have that 911 phone call that Patsy made. I have something to say about that phone call. We also have the note. I obviously have a lot to say about that note. That note, the ransom note, is one of the reasons why I could not fit that whole information in part 1. There's just no way. There's just so much to discuss there, and I think you guys will find it very interesting. Like, I have really interesting points already marked. I want to talk about the note right now, but I can't. I need to do the timeline first, right? What else? We also have interesting little details like the crime scene, like how JonBenet was actually found, where she was placed by her father, John Ramsey. What was that whole situation? The fact that apparently you can hear Burke Ramsey in the background when the family was stating that he was asleep at that time. And then he stated that he was asleep, that he didn't want to wake up because he didn't want to get out of bed because he knew something bad was happening. But apparently you can hear him say, "What did you find?" Like that whole situation, I don't know. Like, I think episode 2 is going to be really interesting, but I think episode 3, the third part, is going to be the zinger. That's going to be the real meat of the story, because we're going to be looking at suspects. We're going to be looking at what potential, theories there are regarding the family member theory, the intruder theory. I think it's going to be pretty interesting for everyone. So yeah, without any further ado, guys, this was the introductory part. Let's jump to the people involved in this case, and then let's jump straight to the timeline of the death of JonBenet Ramsey. Right, so speaking about JonBenet Ramsey, right, she was born on August 6th, 1990 in Atlanta, Georgia. She was the youngest of 2 children of JonBenet Ramsey and Patricia Ramsey. More on them a little bit later. She had an older brother called Burke Ramsey. More on him later, and I think during the whole three-part series, I will be talking about the guy. But I will say, he's out here suing everyone. He sued the CBS for 250 million. So in advance, I will be saying a lot of allegedlys and things like that because I don't have that type of money. And when Burke Ramsey is out to get you, he gets you. So we're definitely not gonna be treading very lightly in regards to Burke Ramsey. Now, JonBenet was an outgoing Southern girl, it says here, who enjoyed being the center of attention. By age 6, she had already won multiple pageant titles thanks to her bouncy blonde hair, poised smile, and glittery costumes. Her father was a multi-millionaire businessman, and her mother, who was also a former beauty queen. She was actually, Patricia Ramsey was actually Miss West Virginia of 1977. So she was like the top one out of West Virginia in 77, because I think Miss West Virginia, right? When you win like the Miss West Virginia, you get to go to like the Miss USA, right? So she was the number one in West Virginia. So she was definitely not a nobody in the system, in the beauty pageant system. Patricia Ramsey won like the thing to win in West Virginia. So she basically doted on her daughter. I don't know what that means. In every way she could. I think this means that the luxurious home that JonBenet Ramsey was living in was actually plush with everything JonBenet ever needed to live a comfortable life. And a big reason for that is actually the father, John Ramsey, because John Ramsey was a very successful businessman. I think I will mention his business a little bit later on in the show. A lot of information about JonBenet Ramsey is actually on IMDb, believe it or not. At least during my research, I found it to be a very good source of like her bio, at least. So she was actually, at the time of her death, she was 4'7", that's 1.4 meters. So I think an average height for a 6-year-old, nothing too out of the ordinary there. She was a member of child beauty contests, and she had titles including America's Royal Miss, Colorado State All-Star Kids Cover Girl, Little Miss Charlevoix, Michigan, Little Miss Colorado, Little Miss Merry Christmas, Little Miss Sunburst, and of course National Tiny Miss Beauty, of course. So a big part of her winning streak, right, in the beauty pageant system, the child beauty pageant system, was actually due to Patsy Ann Ramsey, her mother. Let's talk a little bit about the mother here. She was an American beauty pageant winner. As I've said earlier, she won like the thing to win in West Virginia. That's that Miss West Virginia pageant. She was actually only 20 when she won. I've read that you have to be between the ages of 18 and 25. If I'm not mistaken, if you're older than 25, they're not gonna let you in that. So she was actually only 20 when she won that thing. I don't know, her personal life before she met John Ramsey seemed fairly normal, fairly ordinary. I'm reading here that she graduated from Parkersburg High School in 75. So, she won that whole beauty pageant thing only 2 years after she graduated. She actually attended West Virginia University, so she went to uni. Where she belonged to the Alpha 11 Delta sorority. I'm not really familiar with like American university things like sororities and things like that. We don't really have those, so it's always fascinating for me to read about them and then obviously completely have no idea what I'm reading about. And she graduated from that university in with a BA in journalism in 78. So one thing that stands out immediately is that BA in journalism, that means she is very literate, and that means she can compose her thoughts into words fairly easily. This also should give us a little bit of a insight into when we will be looking into, what she was potentially saying to police after, everything happened, to the press. I think this, BA in journalism, her being very outspoken and confident. I mean, she was out there winning the beauty pageants, right? So she could have an easier time potentially giving out certain information that may not be what actually is the truth. I'm not saying anything right now. We will go into that later on. And she was 23 when she married businessman John Ramsey on November 5th, 1980. And I guess this is where we're jumping to John Ramsey. Okay, JonBenet Ramsey, as most of you already know, his full name was actually the idea behind the JonBenet's name. John Bennett. You take the beginning of John and the second part of Bennett, you get JonBenet, right? So this guy was an American businessman. He's still alive. He's at the time of this recording, he's actually 77 years of age, so he's quite old. He's an older man at this point. He was an American businessman. He was also an author. He was famously known for being the father of JonBenet Ramsey. So John was born in Lincoln, Nebraska, of all places. He was the son of Mary Jane and then James Dudley Ramsey, nickname Jay. The father was actually a decorated World War II pilot. John attended Okemos High School in Michigan. In 1966, he graduated from Michigan State University. That's MSU. That's, I think, a pretty big time university. At least that's my international person knowledge in regards to the universities in America. And he actually graduated with a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering. Ramsey earned a master's degree in business and administration from the same MSU in 1971. So he went for the one thing, then he later on got that business administration as well. He joined the Navy in 66, so right at the same year when he graduated from his first stint with MSU. He served as a civil engineer corps officer in the Philippines for 3 years actually, and in Atlanta Reserve Unit for an additional 8 years. I think one of John's most successful times in his life and in regards to his business was actually the late 80s, early to mid 90s. I'm not quite sure how his whole enterprise worked out in the late 90s because I'm hearing right now, at least from my research, that currently John Ramsey is in some sort of a financial straits type of a situation. Not really sure. Maybe we'll talk about this later on. Probably not, since it's not what we're here to discuss. But back in the late 80s, business was booming. In 89, Ramsey formed the Advanced Product Group, one of 3 companies that eventually merged to become Access Graphic. Now, Access Graphic was a big time company. Their turnovers were like $1 billion. He became president of that company and chief executive officer of Access Graphics. So he was the president of his own Advanced Product Group, and then he was the CEO of Access Graphic, which was a computer service company I'm reading here, and actually was a subsidiary of Lockheed Martin. I'm sure everyone knows about this already. But in 1996, as I've said, Access Graphic grossed over $1 billion. And actually, Ramsey in 1906, the same year when JonBenet actually died, was named Entrepreneur of the Year by the Boulder Chamber of Commerce. I believe this was prior to the whole scandal, right? Um, Immediately following the murder of JonBenet, he was, quote, temporarily replaced so the company did not have to bother him about business matters as he grieved. Now, according to Lockheed Martin spokesman Evan McCullum, he returned to his job within weeks. Some people may find that suspicious. Probably, I will say I don't, because I think work is the best thing to keep your mind off of things. So I'm thinking it's pretty normal for him to return within a few weeks. I'd probably do the same. I wouldn't like lock myself in for like years. And this leaves us with JonBenet's brother, her older brother, Burke Ramsey. Now, as I've said, Burke Ramsey is out here suing people left and right, so I want to be very careful regarding what I say about Burke Ramsey. I will say that after watching his interviews with the police after, JonBenet was killed, because he was initially suspected to be somehow connected, and I think more so now than ever after that CBA's The Case of JonBenet Ramsey, that two-part thing that you could actually find on YouTube came out. That thing was pushing so hard that Burke was responsible. I know that the points that they made are like sound points, but at some point you have to start questioning Jim Clemente. Good old Jim Clemente. I think Jim Clemente is gonna play a big role in this podcast, just in general. So, a good old Jim Clemente was like on the show saying, we're here to find out the truth. We're not trying to push here an agenda. We're not trying to push a certain narrative, but literally not a sing from the 2.5 hours of that, of that show, of the two-part series, The Case of JonBenet Ramsey. Not one thing, to my understanding, was mentioned that would sort of, at least, would be a con to the family member theory. Like every test they did, literally everything they did was pretty much making it out to seem like it was a complete inside job by the family. So I mean, they did a really good job, but at the first part when I was watching that documentary, I was like, whoa, this is crazy. Like the family legit did it, and oh my god, this is so obvious. But dude, as I was watching part 2 of that documentary, I was like, god damn, these guys, like, they will not say anything that would be a con to that theory. So at some point I was watching that documentary, I was like, this is like way too one-sided. At least give the family a bone or something like that. Like give something a bone. And at the end of the 2 parts, right, I think they were like the panel of the super heroes of forensic science, right? So the panel of those guys, they all pretty much came to a conclusion that Burke Ramsey, right, actually hit JonBenet Ramsey with like some object, probably that flashlight, right? Because they did like a test with like a 10-year-old kid who also hit like a fake skull of a 10-year-old, and the impact was the same exact as in the autopsy and things like that. So they were like, the Burke had to have done it, and the motivation was that on Christmas night Burke went to have a snack at the middle of the night, some pineapple, and their theory was that JonBenet took a piece of that pineapple from his bowl and he was like, I ain't having that, wha-bam, and that's how that whole situation went down. So I don't know, they were certainly pretty adamant that that was what had happened, and they were actually pushing for a re-investigation of this case. Now, following that whole situation, Burke Ramsey actually sued them for $250 million, and I think the case has been settled last year, so right before COVID, so 2019, I mean the year prior, 2020. So 2019, I think they settled it, right? And I don't think there's information in regards to what Burke got. I don't think he got 250 million, but I will probably say he got like a few Ferraris out of that. So I definitely don't, I want to tread lightly here. I think there's nothing to say about Burke Ramsey other than he seemed a little bit socially awkward, a little bit, and he was said by multiple people working for the family, like gardeners, and I think the whole I don't know, like caretakers of the family, right? That Burke was actually less social than JonBenet. JonBenet was like obviously very outgoing, very talkative, just a very sweet little girl. Burke Ramsey seemed to always stay to himself a little bit, and he really was very weird during the investigation when he was like, when they were doing interviews with him, when he was like sitting back, he was like, you guys trying to find out who did it. Good luck, suckers. So he had that type of vibe to him. I don't want to talk about him too much right now. He will definitely come up in part 3, I'm assuming, because that's when I will be discussing what I believe was the case, what I think actually happened. And this is the time, this is the moment we've all been waiting for. Let's get right into the timeline of the death of JonBenet Ramsey. I have certain points I want to address in this first part, and now since I've already decided that the evidence side of the story of the whole case will be discussed on the second part of this podcast, I am actually feeling really happy because I don't have to rush and I don't have to think in the back of my mind, yo, I need to get past this timeline really quickly. I can address all of the points that I find very interesting in the timeline, and there's a lot of points, and I think a lot of people, when they're doing a podcast or, you know, some sort of a video on this case, they don't usually talk about all of the interesting facts. And I think, you know, this is sort of the theme of this podcast. I actually do get into the details quite thoroughly. So I'm really glad that I can do that, and I don't have to worry about me. Oh, goddamn, I still have to talk about the 911 call, about the note. I can just chill out, have fun right now, and talk about those things on the second part. Right, so the first thing of note is 1977, Patsy Ramsey named Miss West Virginia. And we only actually have this one clip I want to play for you guys where Patsy Ramsey comes up all smiley and stuff like, I'm a junior at West Virginia University.
You yourself had entered beauty contests.
Yes.
I'm a junior at West Virginia University.
So this was, what, fun for you both
It
to
was
have
the
her do
most
this?
wonderful time of my life.
Okay, a quick clarification because I just realized that there's actually a thing called Miss America pageant and then Miss USA pageant. So these are the two rivaling pageant organizations. So Patsy Ramsey actually won Miss West Virginia, but there's a thing called Miss West Virginia USA. So I was like looking at 1978 Miss USA, and I was trying to see, you know, what placement did Patsy Ramsey took in that thing, but she wasn't competing. Some woman called Pat Brown was actually representing West Virginia on Miss USA, but Miss USA is not connected to Miss West Virginia. Miss USA is connected to Miss West Virginia USA. It's a bit tricky, right? So Patsy Ramsey, I'm not sure if she went to the Miss America pageant because, you know, she won the Miss West Virginia. That would allow her to go to Miss America pageant. I'm looking at the results here, and there's no mention of her, so I'm curious whether or not she actually went to that pageant. She's definitely not in the top 10. She didn't won anything in lifestyle and fitness or talent, and she is not mentioned in the... Oh wait, she's mentioned. What am I saying? She's mentioned in non-finalist talent West Virginia, Patricia Ann Powell. So Patricia Ann, Patsy Ramsey is actually mentioned in the non-finalist talent. Not sure what that means, but maybe she didn't make the finals, but she had some cool talents, right? That made her a honorable mention. Now, another honorable mention is actually Patsy's sister, Pamela Ellen Powell, who actually won also Miss West Virginia, but she won it in 1980. So Patsy won it in 77. 3 years later, Patsy's sister wins the same thing. And I'm okay, this is getting suspicious. I mean, I will say this could be like something I'm very curious whether or not there was some sort of collusion because two sisters winning the same pageant. I mean, what are the chances, right? I mean, that's pretty interesting. Maybe they do have some cool talents. And you know what other thing happened on 1980? Patsy Ramsey actually marries John Ramsey. So 3 years after the beauty pageant, right? 7 years into their marriage, Patsy's and John's son, their first child, Burke Ramsey, was born, and this was on January 27th, 1987. And then also she gave birth to their second child, the daughter, JonBenet Ramsey, and she was born on August 6th in 1990 in Atlanta. The following year, in 1991, the family moves from Atlanta to Boulder, Colorado, because John Ramsey's work was there. His company at that time was stationed there, so, it was definitely smart for them to move there. The next year, something tragic happens, because one thing we haven't talked about John Ramsey yet, he had children from another marriage. John had previously married Luciana Pesh in 1966, and they had 3 children, but they divorced in 1978, 2 years prior to John marrying Patsy. And John's eldest daughter from that marriage with Luciana, Elizabeth, was killed in a car crash at the age of 22 in 1992. So that happened, that's a pretty significant time stamp in the timeline as well. On the same year, on 1992, the family actually buys a Charlevoix house, their vacation house, the 1,731 square foot home in Charlevoix, Michigan, and they actually paid $336,400 for that estate. It's a beautiful estate from what I'm gathering, and actually that house is one of the tourist attractions in Charlevoix, and I think it's one of the 10 homes that tourists are brought to see when they visit Charlevoix. So there was actually a lot of attention from passerby people regarding their estate, because it's, I've seen some pictures. I'm not really certain regarding the credibility of those pictures, but the estate does look really nice, really fancy, and just indicates that the family was quite wealthy to afford such an estate. And then the following year, in the June of 1993, something tragic happens again. So, 1 year prior, we had Elizabeth Ramsey dying in that car accident. So John Ramsey was hit with that life crisis, right? That's crazy. I mean, you should never witness one of your offsprings dying as a parent. That's probably the worst thing that could happen. Well, this kept happening in the Ramsey family, on multiple occasions, we will find out. But actually, in 1993, another tragic event happens. Patsy Ramsey was diagnosed with breast cancer. So Patsy Ramsey went to a Charlevoix Community Hospital for 2 exams and an MRI. and she was diagnosed with breast cancer. Some more shocking news the following year. It seemed like in the 90s, every year the Ramseys had like a big event, right? So for the 1994, Burke Ramsey came through with the scandalous event, right, for the family. So he hit JonBenet Ramsey with a golf club. So I'm reading here that, you know, JonBenet Ramsey was hit on the cheek with a golf club by her brother, Burke Ramsey. You know, golf club. I don't know. This seems very serious. You know, at that time, I believe Burke was 7, and I think JonBenet was like 4. So to hit your 4-year-old sister with a golf club to the cheek, so basically to the head, not to like a leg or something like that. I could sort of understand kids like playing around and well, bam, you hit your like, sibling in the leg, but he hit her in the face. So in the cheek, that's a pretty crazy situation right there. I think that's probably not normal, you know? So this happened in January. On the same year, 1994, October, so 10 months after that event where Burke hit JonBenet with that golf club in the head, JonBenet actually went to a plastic surgeon in Denver for a scar related to the golf club. So she had a plastic surgery, I think, to remove that scar or something like that, because when we see, images of JonBenet, we don't see any scar on her face or anything like that. So I think that scar may have been small, because I think if Burke hit her in a manner that would leave like a massive scar on her face, I think we could still see the indications of that, because I believe in early 90s they didn't have the technology to quite eliminate the scar completely. Obviously they could have, I'm not an expert, but I think the scar was minor to my understanding. Let's move 1 year in advance. 1995 in April, Colorado All-Stars Christmas pageant was won by JonBenet Ramsey. So she won the Colorado All-Stars Christmas pageant on the same month. On the same month that she won that pageant, 1995, Patsy Ramsey was actually interviewed by Boulder's Woman magazine. I think she left a lot of details in that magazine. I don't have that information for you right now. October 1995, Little Miss Colorado Sunburst was won by JonBenet Ramsey. Actually, the same month, on October, John Ramsey received that award, the Entrepreneur of Distinction Award. I'm not sure if it's the same award, but maybe in Boulder there weren't that many entrepreneurs, so probably John was like raking in all the awards, right? But also in October, he appeared in Boulder County Business Report. That also happened. Let's move 1 year in advance. Let's move to April of 1996. We're getting very close to the infamous day. We're getting real close, guys. So on April 1996, there was a woman's magazine issue where Patsy Ramsey was profiled, and she actually included a lot of personal information about herself and her family. We have July of that same year. JonBenet Ramsey keeps winning. Her win streak is unmatched, probably, in Boulder. She wins the America's Royale Tiny Miss. So she won the Tiny Miss. And then also, she came in second place. I'm not really certain when this was. I think in summer 1996. JonBenet also takes second place in the Sunburst National Pageant in Atlanta, Georgia. So this is happening in Atlanta. And we're getting closer and closer to the December months, but actually in November 30th, so the last day of November, I believe this was the 40th birthday celebration for Patsy Ramsey. So they had that whole celebration. Patsy Ramsey, I believe, turned 40 just before JonBenet Ramsey died, like a month before. Boulder has a parade called Lights of December. So this Lights of December parade happens every year. We have some pictures from like recent years, I'm assuming, but back in 1996, JonBenet actually appeared on the parade with her own Little Miss Colorado float during the Lights of December parade on the Boulder Mall. Burke was also in this parade, so the family was at least, like, I'm assuming Patsy Ramsey was like full in, like, I'm going all in with this beauty pageant stuff. Like, this is a little overkill in my opinion. I'm wondering at this point whether or not JonBenet actually enjoyed doing these beauty pageants, because there were some reports coming from caretakers that were like caring for JonBenet Ramsey, and one of them said, something along the lines that when JonBenet Ramsey met new people, she wouldn't talk about pageant stuff at all. And whenever asked about pageants, she would just say, "Oh, I'm in the pageant system," or like, I compete in the pageants. I think Patsy Ramsey was like the mastermind of the pageants, right? December 12th. Church party in Ramsey's home. So a party at Ramsey's home on December 13th happened and was actually attended by more than 150 friends from the church. So this is an important detail. 150 people at their home. Now, if we are gonna later on speculate regarding the intruder theory, is it completely out of the question that someone out of those 150 people was actually out there scoping out the area where they would hide and potentially commit the crime? Is this a possibility? We will investigate this further down the line in the investigation of JonBenet Ramsey's murder. Now, shortly before JonBenet Ramsey died, she actually managed to win one more time. She won the Colorado's Little Miss Christmas. So she wins, quote, Santa Beer. I think that's the prize. In Denver area pageant, sometime in December, JonBenet misses her father. JonBenet tells gardener Brian Scott about John Ramsey. "I really miss him. I wish he was around more." So this guy, I am certain Brian Scott is on that CBS documentary that speculated that Burke Ramsey was the culprit. I think he definitely is the same guy, because I remember a dude on that documentary who was talking about how JonBenet actually had missed her father and things like that. So that's pretty interesting. We definitely are not getting a sense that at least anything to indicate that some sort of a sexual abuse situation is going on in that family, right? We are not getting anything so far, at least from my timeline. I'm not seeing anything right now. JonBenet seems to be living that really good American lifestyle, that American dream for a little girl, right? Well, besides the time that she got hit in the face with the golf club, right? Okay, so now we're moving closer and closer to the actual event, right? So Access Graphic on December 20th had a party celebrating $1 billion in turnover for the last year. I'm assuming more than 300 employees celebrate with John Ramsey also there, because he was the head honcho, right, at the hotel Boulderado. I think it was in Boulder, and Boulder is in Colorado, so the hotel is named Boulderado. It's a funny little thing, I think. On the same day when that party was happening, JonBenet was actually performing at a Rock Around the Clock, which was, I think, a play or something like that, at her High Peaks Elementary School. Let's jump to the following day. Daily Camera, which is, I think, some sort of news publisher, right? So, Daily Camera business writer Tom Lockey publishes an article regarding Axis Graphic reaching 1 billion in sales. Why this is important? Well, again, if we're gonna go with the intruder theory, or at least when we will be speculating why that may have happened, this was getting out into the public that these guys made good money in Colorado. The following day, December 22nd, JonBenet Ramsey appears in a beauty pageant at Southwest Plaza Mall, and then the next day, we have that Ramsey's Christmas party. So the Ramseys hosted a Christmas party with approximately 30 guests attending, and with former journalism professor Bill McReynolds playing Santa Claus. So once again, a whole bunch of people in the Ramseys' residence shortly before JonBenet is killed by, the official version, intruder theory. Could this intruder be one of the person from the church party a few weeks back where 150 people attended, or maybe this party where 30 people attended, that's in total, maybe some of these people intertwined, but there's definitely over 150 people in the residence. Could someone potentially be scoping out the area? Okay, so this is the first crazy detail I want to talk about. At 6:47 p.m. on December 23rd, on this same Christmas party, someone from this party, attended by 30 people, placed a 911 call, which was answered by a police dispatcher named Teresa Hillieri. Now, the caller hung up without saying anything. We have no indication who made the 911 call. Police called back, but they only managed to receive, the answering machine, leave your message after the beep type of a thing, right? So actually, one of the officers from the police station goes to the Ramsey's residence at 6:54 p.m. So the call was made 47 p.m. And actually 7 minutes later, a police officer arrives because they're thinking maybe something's happening in that residence. It's strange. Someone just called us but didn't talk and then hung up, and then we can't reach them again. Now, this resident goes there, and he's actually met by everyone in the party, and he was assured that there was nothing happening, there was no emergency, everything's going swell, and then 7:09 p.m. he leaves. So he goes there, and he stays in that place for 15 minutes. He's being assured that nothing is wrong, and gets out of the house. Now, who made this call? Why was the call made? Who would do this? Who would call 911? Could this have been a potential prank by one of the kids? Because I don't really see a grown man, or woman, unless they're very drunk or intoxicated or had like some coke or something. You know what I mean? To dial 911, it doesn't make any sense. But a prank call from a child maybe makes sense. Maybe there were other children there. So who knows what happened there? Maybe someone in the audience have some more information. I'm very curious. What is the like the most relevant information regarding this 911 call, because I'm getting very strange vibes already. This is very strange. This is not happening on a regular basis, in my personal opinion. So another article appeared the following day on the 24th on the Boulder Daily Camera regarding the Ramsey's Christmas party. So I'm assuming the 24th is Christmas Eve, if I'm not mistaken, right? It's Christmas Eve pretty much, right? So on Christmas Eve, the Boulder Daily Camera is actually writing about the Christmas party that the Ramseys are having. So it's a I don't know, maybe it's a lifestyle publishing, right, thing. The same day, we have JonBenet playing at her friend's Megan Kostanek's house, and JonBenet told Megan's mother about a secret visit from Santa. Also, the same day, the Ramseys attend twilight service at St. John's Episcopal Church in Boulder. Okay, so let's jump to the evening of Christmas Eve, 24th of December. John Ramsey, the father of JonBenet, actually at 9 p.m. in the evening retrieves a brand new silver girl's bike that he had stored in one of his neighbor's garage. The neighbor was Joe Barnhill. So he takes that bike from Joe's garage and he actually places that bike under the Christmas tree for JonBenet. So much for Santa Claus, right? And then also Ramseys get the stashed gifts from basement area, and I'm assuming they're placing those gifts right at the same place, under the Christmas tree, and they're taking them from the basement area. And let's remember, that basement is gonna be the place of the gruesome discovery very soon. We're getting to that point. December 25th, Christmas 1996. 6 a.m. the Ramseys wake up. Okay, so let's remember that the following day, the Ramseys were set to fly to Michigan, I'm assuming to their home in Charlevoix. So around noon, which would be 12 p.m., John Ramsey leaves to check on the plane, and he was gone until 2 or 3 in the afternoon. I'm reading here that there are 2 different times when he was checking the plane, but somewhere in between 2 and 3 p.m. in the afternoon, John returns home from checking the plane. Okay, so from 5 to 6 p.m., the Ramseys left for a Christmas party at the Fleet and Priscilla White's home, because they were their neighbors and they were their best friends apparently. Now there's a quote: "Nothing out of the ordinary occurred at the party, and the Ramseys family appeared to be happy." Okay, so my mistake. Actually, the Whites were not their neighbors, but I think it was in the neighborhood, because when the Ramseys left the party, they actually drove home from that party, and JonBenet and her brother Burke actually fell asleep in the car. On other interesting fact, I think a less mentioned fact on various podcasts regarding this case is that on their way home, the Ramseys actually stopped and dropped off gifts first at the Stuart and Roxy Walker's home, and then later at Glenn and Suzanne Stein's home, and then they drove back home. So I think it's unclear the exact time when the Ramseys arrive home, but I think it's somewhere before 10 p.m. After arriving home, John Ramsey puts his daughter JonBenet Ramsey to bed. John plays a game with Burke. Then Burke goes to bed also, and at 10 p.m., JonBenet Ramsey is last seen alive. There was some sort of a misconception, I think. I'm not really certain about this particular detail. I think there was a situation where Patsy went to JonBenet and actually made sure that she would go and like go to the toilet before she went to bed so that she didn't wet the bed, because apparently JonBenet had issues with the wet bedding situation and things like that. So the next timestamp is actually at somewhere in between 10 to 10:30 p.m. when Patsy went to bed, because during an interrogation with police, she actually stated that her quote is, "I was probably in bed by then, 10 or 10:30, I can't remember exactly." And then somewhere around the same time, the Ramsey stated that John went to bed as well. So the quote is, I think, from Patsy, "John came to bed shortly thereafter." Do you recall if that was 15 minutes or a half an hour later? That's when someone asked Patsy regarding when John went to bed, because they're trying to figure out what the hell was John doing, right? Because we need to look at everything. So Patsy said it was probably just a few minutes later. So we can gauge from this really unclear like timestamp situation that the Ramseys went to bed somewhere around 10 to 10:30 p.m. and the kids were put to bed shortly before 10 p.m. So that's what we're getting from the Ramseys. And now we're gonna be jumping to the really crazy stuff. Okay, so the first thing I want to mention before I jump into the crazy details of December 26th is the fact that the Ramsey's residence was actually a lot bigger than it may seem initially. That's because the front of the house is actually quite small. At least it looks like it's quite small, but the back of the house really reveals to us like the massive size of that house. There are 3 stories and things like that. And why this is relevant is because there are certain events that happened before 6 a.m. in the morning, you know, before the whole thing went down with JonBenet Ramsey being missing and Patsy discovering that ransom note, right? So before that, right around midnight, a neighbor actually saw the Ramseys residents, their estate had a light on in the kitchen window. I think this was the upper kitchen lights, and they were dimmed. At least that's the statement. So around 12 a.m., the families, to my understanding, the family's saying we all went to bed at 10:30, p.m., but the neighbors are reporting seeing lights on at 12 p.m. So it's suspicious. Right now, let's move into the December 26th. At around the beginning of December 26th, that's when the date changes. I want to talk about 12:30 a.m. So 30 minutes after that, right? Right. So 2 a.m. a neighbor heard a scream and placed the time of that scream anywhere between midnight and 2 a.m. at night. So in that period, a neighbor heard a scream in the neighborhood. I'm assuming that's what happened. So let's move a little bit further down the timeline to 5:30 a.m. on December 26th. John Ramsey awakens. Now, the quote is, "The family planned to rise early the following morning because they were to fly to Charlevoix, Michigan for their family vacation." 3 minutes after John awoke, Patsy Ramsey also awoke. So she woke up at 5:33 a.m. in the morning. A few minutes later, after that, she dressed, put on makeup, and went to second floor to rinse out JonBenet Ramsey's jumpsuit, and then she went down the stairs to the kitchen. Now, both Ramseys, especially I think Patsy, stated that she put clothes for trip into plastic bags. So she put like clothing, I'm assuming of the children, into a plastic bag because she was preparing for that trip to Charlevoix, to their nice home in Charlevoix, Michigan. And this is where it all began. 5:45 a.m. December 26th, Miss Ramsey then went down the back stairs towards the second floor. You remember that spiral staircase, right? Then the spiral staircase towards the ground floor. So she was moving downward in the downward direction of those spiral stairs, right? And she discovered a handwritten note on 3 sheets of paper that indicated JonBenet had been kidnapped. I would assume right after finding that note, she must have immediately checked upon JonBenet Ramsey. I mean, we're still going by the official story, guys. I know that some of you are questioning all of this, but let's just go with the official story. We will dissect it later on in future episodes. But so I would assume, by the official story, she finds the note at 5:45 a.m. She would probably be checking up on JonBenet immediately, if that's actually what happened. And then she screamed when she found that JonBenet was missing. Now, John Ramsey rushed towards where Patsy was at that point, and they both went and checked upon Burke at 5:52 a.m. Burke was asleep in his bed, according to the official story. Shortly after that, Mr. Ramsey went downstairs to read the ransom note, while Miss Ramsey called the cops, informing them that her child had been kidnapped. We're gonna listen to that 911 call right now.
911 emergency.
Police.
What's going on?
515th Street.
What's going on there, ma'am?
We have a kidnapping. Hurry, please.
Explain to me what's going on, okay?
There's a note left and our daughter's gone.
A note was left and your daughter is
Yes.
gone? How old is your daughter?
6 years old. She's gone. 6 years old.
How long ago was this?
I don't know. I just found the note. And my daughter's
Does
gone.
it say who took her?
What?
Does it say who took her?
I don't know. There's a ransom note here.
It's a ransom note?
It says SBTC. Victory. Please.
Okay, what's your name? Are you
Patsy Ramsey, I'm the mother. Oh my God. Please.
I'm sending an officer over, okay?
Please.
Do you know how long she's been
No,
gone?
I don't. Please, we just got out. Is she right here? Oh my God, please.
Okay,
Please, there's somebody.
I am, honey.
Please.
Take a deep breath for me,
Please,
okay?
hurry.
Patsy, 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 Patsy.
The one thing I wanted to mention regarding the 911 call, after listening to it a few times, I actually, it was really weird to me, because if I was Patsy Ramsey, I probably wouldn't have hung up on the call, right? Because from like listening to that whole call for multiple times, I would not be 100% sure that police got my address correct, if you know what I mean, because I believe she only states her address once, and in a really quick and panicky manner. Then she's like, hurry, wabam, and then she ends the call, right? So, I mean, if it was me personally, I would, because I'm that type of a person who needs to make sure that everyone understands what's up. Like, I need to remind people like at least 3 or 4 times. So to me personally, it was like, I would not be saying hurry. I would say, did you get the address? when are the cops coming? I need to know this information. I'm not putting down the phone call, right? I mean, that's crazy. I mean, that's just my opinion. So the two officers that arrived to the scene a few minutes before 6 a.m. So everything's happening really fast, right? I think Boulder police reacted really fast. And the two guys that went there was Carl Weich and Rick French. Now, French himself stated in a Vanity Fair interview that after being greeted by Patsy on arrival, John Ramsey, the father, directed him through the house and pointed out a 3-page handwritten note which was laid out on the wooden floor just west of the kitchen area. So that probably means that, they found the note on the spiral stairs, but then they touched it and then they placed it on the floor. Now, I think we will get into some other details later on how only Patsy's fingerprints were found on it. So I'm wondering if John picked up and read it. Why doesn't that note have John's fingerprints also on it? We will get into this later on, I'm sure, because this is a very interesting detail. So apparently, French immediately also searched the house looking for a point of entry, and only after he conducted his search of the house, only then he read the ransom note. Apparently that's what had happened, and this is happening shortly after 6 a.m. And actually, Officer French was the guy who almost found JonBenet Ramsey initially, but he didn't. And what apparently happened is that when Officer French was actually searching the basement, he came to a door secured with a wooden latch. According to police reports, he paused for a brief moment in front of that door, and now we know in hindsight that, on the other side of that door, JonBenet was dead lying there, right? He paused, but then he walked away. So Officer Rick French actually, to this day, regrets not opening that door earlier, but we may think it's pretty weird why he did not do that, but there was a reason for it. He was apparently looking for potential exit points, and since that door was latched off, for him that was an obvious non-exit point, meaning that the perpetrator, the intruder who had kidnapped JonBenet Ramsey, could not have left through that door. But little did he know, JonBenet was actually dead behind it. Very important factor in this case is the fact that there were so many unnecessary people in the Ramsey's residence, and the first one who just should not have been there in the first place were the Whites. Fleet and Priscilla Whites, the same Whites that, the Ramseys went to that Christmas dinner party, right? So those people arrived at around 6:03 a.m. apparently. But this is very significant because apparently Fleet White, Mr. White, actually did open that latched off door. Actually, that was a wine cellar of the Ramseys, right? So Fleet White did open that wine cellar door, but he could not spot JonBenet Ramsey dead lying on the ground because he did not know where the light switch was, and he, just in complete darkness, I guess, you couldn't see that silhouette of a, little child wrapped around in like towels. So this is pretty crazy, right? No one's able to notice that JonBenet is actually dead right there. She's right there, and everyone's just sort of, oh my god, where's JonBenet Ramsey? What are we gonna do about it? Some more friends. Barbara Ferry arrives, so at this point there's Fleet White, Priscilla White, John Ferry, Barbara Ferry, So these people, completely unnecessary people, are at the Ramsey's residence as of 6:20 a.m. in the morning. So apparently at 7 a.m. in the morning, Burke Ramsey is awakened and addressed. And one thing immediately I want to mention here, because I will address this in the future, apparently some people state that we can definitely hear Burke Ramsey, saying, what did you find on the 911 call that happened, over an hour ago at this point? But apparently, he was asleep, so he could not have said it. But I got questions regarding that, but that's for the future. Somewhere in between 7 a.m. and 8 a.m. in the morning, John Ramsey actually also searched the basement. He testified later that he found the broken window partially open. Now, the broken window, let's remember that there's a broken window in the house, right, in the basement, but it was not broken before the so-called kidnappings, quote unquote kidnappings. Actually, John Ramsey used I think he broke that window on purpose to get into the house whenever he's locked outside of the house, something like that, right? So I think that's definitely explained, but the window itself was partially open, according to his testimony. Apparently, at around 7:30 a.m., John Ramsey actually collected the $118,000 demanded in the ransom note, and this pretty much came in just in time, because let's remember a little bit about the note. I know that I didn't read the note. I will be analyzing the note in the following episode, but I just want to read a little snippet from the note. So, you will withdraw $118,000 from your account. $100,000 will be in $100 bills, and the remaining $18,000 will be in $20 bills. Make sure that you bring the adequate sized attaché to the bank. When you get home, you will put the money in a brown paper bag. I will call you between 8 and 10 a.m. tomorrow. So, the 26th, right? So, John Ramsey gets the money by 7:30. So, just in time, because he has another half an hour to spare. And I guess the family was all waiting and was sort of, waiting patiently for this phone call that never came through. No one actually called the Ramseys regarding the ransom. So while they were waiting, right, police actually tapped the phones. I think they did that in John Ramsey's office in the house. Also, one of the officers, Officer Andert, Linda Andert, she actually told John Ramsey what to say if the ransomer did indeed call. And the first thing that John should demand is to actually talk to JonBenet. John Ramsey took notes, and one of the notes that he scribbled down was "must talk to JB," JonBenet. Also, around this time when the family was waiting, well, first of all, let's remember that in the note, the ransomer said, "You will be under surveillance, right? We will be monitoring you. We will actually be monitoring you when you go get the money, right? So don't call the cops." But the Ramseys immediately called the cops, right? And the neighbors came, and literally half of the neighborhood, everyone was pretty much talking about what had happened at that point. So I think the ransomers calling, I think, that was a long shot that was gonna happen if they did do surveillance on the Ramsey's residence. But around the time when they were still waiting, there was a lot of cleaning up happening in the Ramsey's kitchen. There was people or neighbors helping to clean the kitchen. And this is just pretty crazy when you think about it, because a lot of potential evidence has been wiped clean. They cleaned the counters, everything. So I don't know what that was all about. 10 a.m. comes and no one calls the Ramsey's residence. I guess they sort of still were expecting the phone call. But I think as the day progressed, everyone knew that, no one's going to actually call them. And it is what it is. But I will say another interesting note is that at 10:30 a.m., JonBenet's bedroom had been sealed off by detectives Linda Arndr and Fred Patterson. So they sealed it off at approximately 10:30 a.m. Obviously, I think a little bit too late once again. Also, another weird detail: approximately for around an hour or two, somewhere in the morning hours, right? Well, after close to the afternoon, right? uh, John Ramsey actually like left the house and was like missing for an hour or so. And I think his statement was that he went up to pick up the family's mail, like postal mail, right? But uh, then people were speculating that this is completely false because their mail was actually always delivered right into the house through a mail slot by the front door. So who knows where John Ramsey was actually at? It's a little bit of a misconception. He was like out of the house for a while for some reason. But we do know that at around 12:30 p.m. in the afternoon, he was actually alone in the house. He was by himself. Officer Linda Arndt actually noticed that, and she talked to Fleet White at around 1 p.m., so around 30 minutes later. So the story is that Fleet White was approached by Linda, and Linda asked to occupy John's mind for he and John to look through the house to see if anything was amiss. So this is gonna be a very strange situation, in my opinion, right now. So this officer actually asked Fleet White and John Ramsey to check the interior of the residence for any signs of JonBenet or anything that may have been left or taken that belonged to JonBenet. So this is happening at around 1 p.m. So at 1 p.m., John Ramsey and Fleet White start searching the basement. John led Fleet White to the basement, where they first went to the terrain room and examined the broken window. And John said he broke it a few months ago. They also searched for glass on the floor, and then they went to look at a broom closet, and then to the wine cellar, where John Ramsey found JonBenet Ramsey. So the timestamp here is 1:04 p.m. when JonBenet's body was located. But then some suspicious things happened right after that. So initially, Mr. Ramsey entered the room first, turned on the light, and upon discovery of JonBenet's dead body, he exclaimed, quote, "Oh my God, my baby." Right. John also later stated that at that point, all he could do was scream to try to attract attention. Apparently, JonBenet had black duct tape covering her mouth, a cord around her neck that was attached to a wooden garrote, and her hands were bound over her head. In front of her, she was covered by a light-colored blanket. John Ramsey did some questionable things immediately. Mr. Ramsey ripped the duct tape off JonBenet's mouth and attempted to untie her hands. Within a few minutes of going down into the basement, Fleet White came running upstairs. He grabbed the telephone in the back office located on the first floor and yelled for someone to call an ambulance. Shortly after 1:05 p.m., shortly after discovery, John Ramsey carried JonBenet's body upstairs and for some reason sat her down on the floor. Then John picked up the body once again and moved it to the living room near the Christmas tree, where Ramsey knelt beside her, repeating, quote, "My little angel," over and over. Friends carried Patsy, too stunned to walk, over to the body. Police reports describe her throwing herself over JonBenet, right? So there's a lot of touching and moving of the dead girl at this point. To the defense of the Ramseys, at that point they may have not known that JonBenet was dead if we are going by the intruder theory, so I'll give them that. I don't want to make it seem like they were purposely contaminating the scene and the victim's body. I think there's a chance that they were genuinely surprised, and the theory side of things will be looked at in the future episodes of this case. Officer Linda Arndt, I'm assuming, was at the scene when this was all happening, and she called for backup. She declared the code black. Code black, guys, somewhere in between 1:20 p.m. and 1:25 p.m. So around 20 minutes later, Boulder Police Department Officer Barry Weiss and Detective Michael Everett arrive at the Ramseys' residence. It is not clear from this account whether they arrived together or not, so, who knows? Some more officers searched the basement at 1:30 p.m., so, approximately almost 30 minutes after the discovery of the body, right? And then they actually decide to secure the house. So at that point, everyone has to get out the house, because now we're really gonna try to look at what the hell happened here. So I think at this point, everyone is understanding that JonBenet is dead, because at around the same time, Priscilla White calls her niece at the White's home to report the murder, right? So she was calling from the White's residence now. And this another detail that was found to be very interesting by a lot of people is that 10 minutes after that, 1:40 p.m., right? In the afternoon, John called his pilot. So 20 minutes later, after Arndt moves body, John is overheard placing a phone call to his pilot to ready the plane to head for Atlanta. Police instruct them not to leave town, so they stay at a friend's home in Boulder. I'm assuming that was the same White's residence, right? But he was calling 40 minutes after discovery of the body. He was talking on the phone with his pilot, and he said, get the plane ready, we're flying to Atlanta. Apparently around this time, John Ramsey's children also arrived to the scene, but I don't think they knew about what just happened. They were going to come there anyways, while they were still thinking that JonBenet was kidnapped, right? But so I think they came just at the same time when everyone was sort of moved out the house. So it was probably a pretty shocking news announcement to them. JonBenet is not kidnapped; she is dead. We have the body. So this is very important that the house was completely secured only at around 1:50 p.m. It was only upon the discovery of JonBenet's body that the Boulder police began to secure property, the home as well as the crime scene. So that's pretty crazy that, I'm assuming they really believed initially that JonBenet was kidnapped. No one had any ideas that she may have not been kidnapped. But I think, that note was definitely suspicious. I think everyone was like, what the hell happened? Initially, right? They probably weren't expecting her to be kidnapped. Everyone was try to understand what the hell was going on. But I think it was a big mistake that they didn't secure the house immediately. A lot of people went inside the house. JonBenet's body was moved like a hot potato. Everyone was touching her. So it's a bit of a screw up on Boulder's police department for sure. Burke was actually interviewed, and I think he stated somewhere at around 2:30 p.m. when he was at the White's house, because I'm assuming everyone was moved out of the Ramsey's residence, right? So Burke reportedly stated that he had slept through the events of the previous night, and we will question this in the future. Also around this time, John's attorney, Mike Bynum, had arrived to the scene. He went to the living room of one of the family friends where apparently the Ramseys, as well as Reverend Hoberstock, they were all praying, right? They were all kneeling in the living room, and they were all praying. At that point, after they did that prayer thing, John Ramsey, actually asked Bynum to represent him, so he was his at least initial representative. Apparently, somewhere down the line in the day, at around 8 p.m. In the evening, John Ramsey was heard saying, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, while sobbing, but this could mean anything really, so let's not take it out of the context that he was sorry that he did something to JonBenet. He would just say, I'm sorry. It could have meant that he's sorry for not being there for her, something like that, right? Shortly after 8 p.m., police actually obtained search warrant for Ramsey premises and vehicles in Boulder. Sometime down in the evening, the Ramseys, Patsy and John were laying together. And John actually went to pick up his brother, who had just came from Atlanta. Patsy got up at some point. This was, I think, somewhere around 10:30 p.m. in the evening, so pretty late, right? So she got up, she asked, where is her husband? She then sobbed and said, why did they do this? Why did they do this? 10:45 p.m. in the evening, JonBenet's body is removed from the house, and 15 minutes before midnight, Detective Linda Arndt was last to leave the house. So that's that. That's the general timeline. A lot of things happened after that. Actually, the following week, a lot of things also happened. But I wanted to give this general timeline, talk about the case. I think we now have a somewhat of a strong basis to move forward in this case. We do know the events that transpired before JonBenet was found dead, and then shortly after, when she was found dead. We do know about the family members. We do know their backstories a little bit. And I think we have a really nice setup for the next week's show regarding the evidence. And trust me, guys, when I was conducting my initial research, I right now have a lot of notes regarding the evidence. So for me personally, that's gonna be really a really fun episode to do, because I will be able to talk about everything that I found very interesting regarding the 911 call, the house itself, the ransom note, of course, how the Ramseys reacted and things like that. So that's gonna be on part 2 of this investigation into the death of JonBenet Ramsey. And for this week, guys, I'm gonna be signing out right now. As always, I'm very glad that you've listened to me talk right now today. There's a lot of you right now. I'm really happy to see the numbers growing. There's more and more people every week, so I'm like really thinking that, whoa, this is appreciated, and I'm feeling really good about doing this podcast. Like, this is very fun for me to do. And I will say, have a good night, guys, if you're watching this at night or whatever, and I will catch you on the next week's episode. Enjoy your life.